Dan Plesac back here on the show. How are you, Dan?
Rich, I'm doing great, man. It's the trade deadline again already. We did this last year.
Didn't we?
Crazy, right? I think Bryce Harper, the buzz. You know the one I'm surprised is getting so much play? Chris Archer. It sounds like the Brewers are really in on Chris Archer. The Cubs are kicking the tires on Chris Archer. So the two big names that I think that are out there that people are waiting to see if it happens, Chris Archer seems more than likely like he's going to be moved in the next 2 hours. And this Bryce Harper stuff, though, I can't see it, Rich. I just think they're 5.5 games back, that being the Nationals. It's not like they're chasing the 92 or 93 Braves or the 82 Phillies. The Phillies and Braves are good teams, but they would be also Rans in the AL. So I think the Nats are like 1 10-game stretch, Rich, where they go 8-2 or 9-1, and they'd find themselves 3 games out of first place, and they'd be right in. I would be shocked if they moved Harper.
What do you think? What happens when a player of his ilk is being thrown around and they're having a listening tour? I mean, how does that happen? So what I'm saying is a team that you say that needs to rip off 8 of 10 and 9 of 10 and that hasn't shown the ability to do that, will find that gumption if a trade doesn't happen, Dan?
You know what I think if I'm Bryce Harper? He's a different bird than you and I or most players because I think deep down inside, Rich, I think he really wants to test the free agent market. I don't think he's going to take a home team discount. I don't think he's going to play this thing out and go, listen, man, I've had a good run. I just won the home run derby for the Nationals. It's a good story. He's going, my opinion, Scott Boras, they're going to test the market because if they were interested at all in a discount or, hey, I want to stay here, this is where I'm comfortable, we would have heard talks about that already, and he would be squelching the fact that, listen, I want to play my career here. I'd like to stick this thing out. I think, Rich, I don't think he's going to be upset that he's getting dangled, and I think in his own little way, it might even like fuel some fire underneath him because I don't think it's imminent that he's coming back, and I really think he's going to test the water. He wants to test the water to see what's out there for him. That's just my take.
Let me ask you this question then, Dan Plesac, because this is going to be the $300 to $400 million question coming up in the hot stove. If you're a general manager of a team, would you allocate a fifth of your money that your owner is going to give you to make sure you don't go over any luxury tax? Would you allocate it to Bryce Harper?
Boy, that's the tough question because he, you know what he is? He's, I guess if you want to look at like certain players, they're big, their brand, their branding, I think wherever he would go other than D.C., he's going to be an instant hit because he's the one guy. You know, Mike Trout is looked at as the best player in the game, but Mike Trout is so low-keyed. You don't really know much about Mike Trout. Bryce Harper, he's on commercials. He's out there. His face is relevant. Young people know who he is. So I think he's a different bird. I don't think a $400 million contract is going to be out there, Rich, but I think some teams, and it may be the Nationals, and it may be 3 or 4 other teams, I think they'd approach the $40 to $45 million a year, but I don't think anybody's going to be in for like 8 to 10 years. But I could see him a 4 or 5 year deal, and I'm sure Scott Boras will have it where he could have opt-outs after a year or two. I think the average annual is going to be somewhere around $40 million, but I don't think we're going to see a 10-year, $400 million guaranteed contract from one team. Several buyouts. Teams will want to take him on, but much of a shorter-term contract.
So, Dan Plesac, MLB Network here. Do you think the Dodgers would be involved in something like that, even if they would be?
I think so because I think they're going to look at it this way. I really think when the season is over, either or Machado and or Harper. Now, I don't know this because I don't know the Phillies' ownership internally. But, Rich, they want to spend and they want to get better in the worst way. And I would be surprised, shocked both, if either Machado or Harper aren't going to Clearwater in spring training with the Philadelphia Phillies in 2019. I think both guys are on their radar. I'm not sure if Clayton Kershaw has an opt-out, which I'm not sure he will now because of the issues he's had with his back. If the Dodgers are really keen about staying under that luxury payroll threshold, then maybe Machado isn't their guy. But I don't look at Machado necessarily as he's going to stay pat and stay with the Dodgers. I think he's going to also test the market, and I think the Phillies, if there's one team that could blow the market up for both of these guys and create some, I guess, competition, it's going to be the Phillies because they want to get better, and they're holding back so badly. They want to spend money and get better really quick. They're going to drive the stock up on both of these guys.
I don't know, man. And obviously October is going to have a lot to say about it, Dan. But and if I'm the Dodgers, I pour my money into Machado. Figure out tell the Guggenheims to turn over a couch cushion or dive into whatever Maybach they're driving around and find and go over the tax or whatever they have to do and figure out how you work Corey Seager into it. And go to work. I mean, that guy, and certainly if they have the October that we're all expecting, and Dave Roberts knows what he's doing on that front.
I mean, you've had a chance to, you cover sports on a daily basis, but I think for the Dodger fan that gets a chance to watch this guy, I thought going into the trade line, there were two guys that were like really difference makers. The player was Machado, and the pitcher was Jacob deGrom. And I don't think the Mets have any interest in moving deGrom. There's no doubt in my mind. If you were to ask me right now, of all the guys that are so-called available, Machado is number one on my list, and he's number one by a long shot. I think he hits better for average. He has as much power. He's more consistent than Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper goes through these 8-10 game stretches. Well, he'll hit 7-8 home runs, but there's too many stretches of 8 to 10 games where he doesn't do a whole lot. Do you know what I mean? Like at the end of the year, we're going to look at Harper's numbers and go, well, he hit 40, he knocked in 100. But, the 225 batting average, 230 batting average, I don't know. I don't know, Rich. If you were asking me, Machado would be my guy.
No
doubt. Couldn't agree with you more.
Well, I mean, certainly, look, LeBron's coming here. Trout's already in Southern California. And with all due respect, Kershaw's only once every 5 days. With all due respect to all the other position players, I mean, Justin Turner's very popular here. And I know what Bellinger did last year. And Puig, when he puts games together, people go crazy for him out here in Los Angeles. I think if Machado puts together the September and October that everybody expects, it'll be a no-brainer to keep him. And I don't know if Harper would come here or if they should even make that play. I do have to ask you this, Dan. I feel silly, but I got to ask it because it did take up so much oxygen over the weekend. What'd you make of the whole batting practice attire gate, if you will, from Joe Simpson? Dan?
Rich, it's a different time now. You know what I mean? And I guess I could get where the old school guy looks at that and says, "Hey, the gates are open, batting practice." Rich, it's a different time, and I think you have to adjust with the times. And for some of the old school broadcasters and guys that have been around baseball for a while, listen, it's not just the Dodgers. We have a ballpark cam, and we do live look-ins in the afternoon. I get it. The gates aren't always open. It's a different culture of young people now, Rich. I mean, it's just not the mock turtlenecks, and, it's just not the way it was. And I think sometimes you just got to lighten up, and that's the way the world is right now. That's all it is. And I know in my dealings, I've been at the network here now for 9 years, and things are different, and it's about change. And I think when you start to get in your 40s and 50s and you think like you've seen it all, and you want it the way that it used to be, and you want it to be, like Carl Yastrzemski and Jim Rice, and you want it to be Mickey Mantle and the Duke and all that. You know what? That's not the world we live in right now, Rich. That's the best way I could put it. You have to kind of adjust with the times.
And I'm also, Dan, loath to bring up, trade deadline controversies because last year it was right around this time when the Astros didn't make a move and Dallas Keuchel kind of was like, what gives? Does the front office even support us? And then Verlander came before the September 1 call-up by mere seconds anyway, and we all know how what a difference maker that was. And Verlander's now a leader in that locker room, in that clubhouse, where he's basically put in a position, having put on full blast anybody that's been involved in domestic violence. And now here comes Osuna under suspension still. Is this going to be a problem in that clubhouse, do you think?
It very well could be. Dan? You know what this screams to me, Rich? It is what it still is, and it always probably will be when it comes deep down to it. It's about winning baseball games, right? Now, Ozuna has a hearing. He has one more game, I believe, August 1st tomorrow. The suspension is lifted, but he also has some legalities that he has to get through. He served a 75-game suspension. And I know Justin Verlander, and after the game yesterday, he had to address this. He made some very strong statements against Roberto Ozuna and against the best of violence. And I get that. I understand it. It's going to be an interesting situation when Ozuna, if this goes through and the legal process plays itself out. This is what I guess what is so crazy about the game and the world we live in right now. Right now, he served a 75-game suspension. I wonder if the Astros make this deal if he wasn't allowed to participate in the postseason.
There's no chance to make that deal.
Right. Robinson Cano now has got popped for 80 games, right? When he comes back, he's not going to be able to play in the postseason, but Roberto Ozuna will. And I can't say this for the Astros, but I find it hard to believe, Rich, that they would pull the trigger on this deal if they knew he wasn't able to pitch in the postseason.
Because they don't need the help to get to the postseason. They need the help in the back end of their that was their Achilles heel pretty much last year, and the thought maybe McCullers does the same thing this time around that he did last year to help him out with that. There's no question, Dan, if he was unavailable in October, they don't need Ozuna to get to October. They're getting to October. I mean, that's a fact.
Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma, and from an organization, the Astros, Jeff Luhnow came on record yesterday saying that they have a zero tolerance policy, but yet they're willing to give a guy a second chance. And I get that, and I totally understand that, but I just find it hard to believe that they would have been really anxious to make this move if at the end of September, he wasn't going to be able to play in the postseason. So that's what this is about. Any way you look at it, slice it and dice it.
And if there's anybody, I guess, that can handle anything in the clubhouse, it should be A.J. Hinch anyway, and then just put that on his plate. Dan, always love our chats. Let's chat again real soon.
Let's do this again before the postseason starts.
Oh, please. Let's do it before August hits the midway point. I always love chatting.
You got it.
You got it.
I want another home run call from Giancarlo Stanton, too.
Do you want to Mike, just give that to Dan.
Can I have one? It'll make my trade deadline better.
Yeah, Dan Plesac requesting a John Sterling home run call that may or may not be real. I'm just giving that out there. It may or may not be real. You got it, Mike Del Tufo? Play it for Dan Plesac, please, here on the Rich Eisen Show. You got it, Mike? Is that a yes or a no? You got to give me some sort of heads up, Mike.
Mike, words.
Is that a yes? Drury leads off second. And here's the 1-2 to Aaron. Swung on and hit in the air to deep right. It is high. It is far. It is gone. A 2-run bomb as all rise. It's Judge and Drury as a few good men school. And the verdict is the Yankees lead the Red Sox 12-1. And Chris Brockman can't handle the truth. Here's the 1-2 to John. That's just good.
At least I didn't get told to suck it.
Gonna give him the 2.
Fantastic. You just made my day.
You got it, Dan.
Thanks, Rick.
You got it. Of course, the trade deadline makes that moot point now.
Yeah,
it's a moot court because Drury's gone.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.